Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Horizon, watching the stars shift as his ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel. After 80 months of traveling across the galaxy, they had finally reached the edge of Zeltharian space. This was humanity's first contact with another intelligent species, and Jake felt the weight of history on his shoulders. The exploration vessel Horizon was not alone. Behind them followed the massive flagship UES Liberty, carrying Admiral Lisa Hayes and the full diplomatic team. Ambassador Kevin Walsh had spent years preparing for this moment, learning everything humanity could discover about the Zeltharian Empire from their radio signals and deep space observations. Dr. Amy Foster, the mission's lead xenobiologist, joined Jake at the viewing window. She had studied every piece of data they had about the Zeltharians. From what they could tell, the reptilian beings had built an empire spanning 12 star systems. Their technology was clearly advanced and their military seemed powerful. But humanity hoped to meet them as equals, not as enemies. "Contact on sensors, Captain," reported Lieutenant Ben Carter from his station. "Large vessels approaching. Configuration matches Zeltharian warship designs." Jake nodded. This was expected. Any advanced civilization would want to check out unknown visitors. "Open communications. Send our peaceful greeting message in their language." The response came quickly. A harsh, clicking voice filled the bridge, translated by their computers. "Unknown vessels, you will follow our ships to the designated meeting point. Any deviation will be met with destruction." Ambassador Walsh's voice came over the come from the Liberty. "Not the warmest welcome, but we expected formal protocols. Let's proceed as planned." The human ships were escorted through the Zeltharian system toward a massive space station orbiting their homeworld. Jake had never seen anything like it. The station was the size of a small moon, covered in crystalline structures that caught and reflected the system's dual suns. Zeltharian warships patrolled in perfect formations around it. As they approached the docking bays, Jake got his first look at a Zeltharian ship up close. The vessels were beautiful in their own way, made of what looked like living metal that shifted colors. They were clearly built for war, with weapon ports visible along every surface. The design spoke of a species that valued strength above all else. The docking process took several hours. Zeltharian officials, wearing ceremonial armor made of what appeared to be actual crystal, boarded both human ships to conduct inspections. They moved with mechanical precision, their reptilian features hidden behind face masks. They spoke little, and showed no curiosity about humanity or their technology. Finally, the diplomatic party was allowed to transfer to the station. Admiral Hayes led the group, followed by Ambassador Walsh, Dr. Foster, and a small security detail commanded by Captain Susan Clark. They carried with them samples of human art, music recordings, and scientific data as gifts for their hosts. The interior of the Zeltharian station was as impressive as its exterior. Corridors stretched in perfect geometric patterns, lit by crystals that seemed to generate their own light. The walls were covered in symbols that their translation computers struggled to interpret. Everything was designed to impress visitors with Zeltharian power and technological superiority. They were led to a vast chamber where the Zeltharian High Command waited. The room was circular, with high-ranking Zeltharians seated on raised platforms. Around the edges, at the center, sat Supreme Overlord Vextar, the absolute ruler of the Zeltharian Empire. He was larger than the others, his crystalline armor more elaborate, and his presence dominated the room. Ambassador Walsh stepped forward and began the carefully prepared greeting speech. He spoke of humanity's desire for peace, their hope for mutual cooperation, and their respect for Zeltharian achievements. He offered the gifts they had brought, explaining each item and its significance to human culture. The Zeltharians listened in silence. When Walsh finished, Supreme Overlord Vextar rose from his throne. His voice, when he spoke, was deep and commanding. "Small beings from the Outer Rim," he began, "you have traveled far to reach our glorious empire. Your species shows promise, though you are clearly primitive compared to our advanced civilization. We are prepared to offer you a place within our empire. You will submit to Zeltharian rule, provide tribute as determined by our officials, and serve the greater glory of our people. In return, we will protect you from the dangers of the galaxy and guide your development. Ambassador Walsh had prepared for this possibility. Many advanced civilizations might expect smaller ones to become vassals. He responded diplomatically but clearly. We are honored by your offer, Supreme Overlord, but humanity must respectfully decline. We seek partnership between equals, not subjugation. Our species values independence and self-determination. We hope to build a relationship based on mutual respect and benefit. The reaction was immediate and shocking. The entire chamber fell into complete silence. Supreme Overlord Vexstar S eyes, which had been a pale blue, suddenly flared bright red. The other Zeltharians began making harsh clicking sounds that their translators identified as expressions of outrage. Equals? Vexstar's voice rose to a roar. You dare speak of equality with the masters of this galaxy? Your pathetic species crawls out of some forgotten corner of space and presumes to negotiate with the Zeltharian Empire? Dr. Foster whispered urgently to Admiral Hayes. Their body language suggests extreme anger. This is much worse than our worst-case scenarios predicted. Supreme Overlord Vexstar continued his tirade. For 3,000 years, the Zeltharian Empire has ruled this galaxy through strength and superiority. Every species that has encountered us has recognized our obvious dominance and submitted willingly. You are the first to show such cosmic arrogance. Ambassador Walsh tried to calm the situation. We mean no disrespect. Perhaps we can find a middle ground that serves both our peoples. Silence, Vexstar commanded. You have insulted the Empire. In the most fundamental way possible. You have questioned our authority and refused our generous offer of protection. This cannot stand. The Supreme Overlord turned to his subordinates. Prepare a demonstration of power. These humans need to understand the consequences of defying the Zeltharian Empire. Admiral Hayes recognized the danger immediately. We should return to our ships and withdraw to a safe distance for further negotiations, but it was too late. Vexstar raised one clawed hand and alerts began sounding throughout the station. No creature leaves Zeltharian space after refusing our authority. You will witness our power, and then your species will submit or be destroyed. The human delegation was escorted back to their ships under heavy guard. As they reached the docking bay, Jake could see through the station's transparent sections that dozens of Zeltharian warships were taking attack positions around the human vessels. Admiral, Captain Clark reported from the Liberty, their ships are powering weapons and targeting systems. Admiral Hayes made the hardest decision of her career. All ships prepare for emergency departure. We're leaving now. The Zeltharian attack began just as the human ships cleared the docking bay. Energy beams, more powerful than anything in humanity's arsenal, lanced out from the warships. The Horizon's shields flared and failed under the first impact. Jake fought to keep his ship together as explosions rocked the hull. Liberty is taking heavy damage, came the panicked report. They've lost main power. Admiral Hayes' voice crackled over the communication system. Jake, get out of here. That's an order. Someone has to warn Earth. The Liberty, humanity's pride and the largest ship they had ever built, broke apart under concentrated fire. Ambassador Walsh, Dr. Foster, and hundreds of crew members died in the explosion. The smaller escort ships were destroyed moments later, only the Horizon escaped, its hull breached and systems failing. Jake pushed the damaged ship beyond its limits, jumping to faster-than-light travel just as more Zeltharian ships arrived to join the attack dot as they limped home through space. Jake received one final message from the Zeltharian Empire. It was being broadcast across known space to every species with radio technology. Let this serve as a warning to all inferior species, Supreme Overlord Vexstar announced. The Zeltharian Empire offers protection and guidance to those wise enough to accept our authority. Those who refuse, like the arrogant humans, will face destruction. Submit to Zeltharian rule or share their fate. The message included footage of the human ships being destroyed, broadcast as a demonstration of Zeltharian power. What the Zeltharians didn't realize was that they had just made the worst mistake in galactic history. They had attacked a diplomatic mission, murdered peaceful ambassadors, and declared war on a species they knew nothing about. As the damaged Horizon struggled toward Earth with news of the disaster, Supreme Overlord Vexstar was already ordering his invasion fleets to mobilize. He expected humanity to surrender the moment Zeltharian ships appeared in their home system. After all, every other species had done exactly that. The Zeltharians had no idea what they had just awakened. Captain Jake Morrison's damaged ship limped into Earth's solar system, 6 months after the disaster at the Zeltharian homeworld. The Horizon was barely holding together, its hull scarred by energy weapon burns and its engines running on emergency power. Jake had pushed his crew and his ship to their limits to bring the terrible news home. Earth's orbital defense stations immediately detected the approaching vessel and sent escort ships to meet them. When the escort captains saw the condition of the Horizon, they knew something had gone very wrong. The diplomatic mission that had left Earth with such hope had returned as a single, broken ship. General Marcus Stone was waiting at Luna Base when Jake's ship finally docked. The general had been in charge of Earth's defenses for 15 years, but he had never expected to face an alien invasion. As Jake stumbled off his ship, exhausted from months of desperate travel, he delivered the news that would change everything. They killed them all, Jake said, his voice hollow with grief. Admiral Hayes, Ambassador Walsh, Dr. Foster, everyone on the Liberty. The Zeltharians didn't even try to negotiate. They just opened fire. General Stone listened in growing horror as Jake described the attack. The Zeltharians had not just refused diplomacy, they had declared war on humanity for the crime of wanting to remain independent. Worse, they were broadcasting the destruction of human ships across the galaxy as a warning to other species. Within hours, President Rachel Martinez was addressing the emergency session of the Global Council. The world's leaders gathered in the underground bunker beneath Geneva, their faces grim as they heard Jake's report. Earth had barely achieved interstellar travel, and now they faced an empire that had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. How long do we have? President Martinez asked. Jake looked at the tactical displays showing what they knew about Zeltharian technology. Based on their ship speeds and the distance to Earth, maybe 6 months. Maybe less if they have faster ships than what we observed. The preparations began immediately. Captain Susan Clark, one of the few survivors from the escort ships, was put in charge of evacuation efforts. Earth had several colonies in nearby star systems, but they were small and could only hold a fraction of Earth's population. The math was brutal and simple. Most of humanity would have to stay and fight. Dr. Helen Carter, Earth's leading physicist, was rushed to the secret research facility beneath the Rocky Mountains. Along with engineer Paul Rodriguez and a team of the world's best scientists, she began working on humanity's only hope, new weapons and defenses that might give them a chance against Zeltharian technology. The work was desperate and around the clock. They studied every piece of data from Jake's ship, analyzing the energy signatures of Zeltharian weapons and the composition of their hull materials. Dr. Carter's team made breakthrough after breakthrough, but they all knew it might not be enough. Meanwhile, the evacuations continued. Captain Clark organized a massive fleet of cargo ships, passenger vessels, and anything else that could carry people to the outer colonies. Families were torn apart as parents sent their children away while staying behind to defend their world. The scenes at the spaceports were heartbreaking, but everyone understood the necessity. Colonel Janet Murphy took charge of training civilian volunteers for the coming war. Factory workers, teachers, and shopkeepers learned to use military weapons and fight in organized units. If the Zeltharians wanted Earth, humanity would make them pay for every city, every street, every building. The outer colonies prepared as well. Mayor Tony Russo of New Mars organized the refugee camps and supply depots. Dr. Emma Davis led research teams studying every scrap of Zeltharian technology they could find. The scattered human settlements began connecting through a new communication network that Dr. Carter's team had developed. As the months passed, Long-range sensors finally detected the approaching Zeltharian fleet. It was massive beyond anything humanity had imagined. Hundreds of warships, troop transports, and support vessels. The fleet was clearly designed to crush any resistance and occupy Earth permanently, Lieutenant Commander Alex Wright commanded, one of Earth's few remaining deep space patrol ships. His mission was to observe the Zeltharian fleet and report on their capabilities. What he saw filled him with despair. The enemy ships were each larger than Earth's biggest vessels, and their weapons could destroy entire cities with single shots. The invasion began on a Tuesday morning. The Zeltharian fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system and immediately began broadcasting surrender demands. Supreme Overlord Vexstar appeared on screens across Earth, his reptilian features twisted with contempt. "Humans of Earth," he announced, "your pathetic resistance ends now. You refused our generous offer of protection and chose to defy the Zeltharian Empire. Now you will face the consequences of your arrogance. Surrender immediately, and we will allow some of you to live as slaves. Continue to resist, and we will exterminate your entire species." President Martinez's response was broadcast from the emergency bunker. "We are the people of Earth, and we do not surrender to bullies. You want our world? Come and take it." The battle for Earth began within hours. The Zeltharian fleet moved through the outer system, brushing aside the small defense stations like they were toys. Earth's orbital platforms managed to damage a few enemy ships before being destroyed. But it was clear that humanity's technology was hopelessly outmatched. General Stone coordinated the defense from Luna Base, trying to buy time for the final evacuations. The last refugee ships were still launching from Earth, carrying children and elderly people to safety in the outer colonies. Every minute the defense held meant more lives saved. The real horror began when the Zeltharian ships reached Earth orbit. They didn't bother with a ground invasion. Instead, they began systematic orbital bombardment, targeting Earth's major cities with weapons that could level entire metropolitan areas. The destruction was methodical and deliberate, designed to break humanity's will to fight. Lieutenant Commander Wright watched from his damaged patrol ship as New York disappeared in a flash of energy. London, Tokyo, Sydney, and Berlin followed within hours. The Zeltharians were not just conquering Earth. They were making an example of it for the rest of the galaxy to see. Underground. Dr. Carter and Engineer Rodriguez worked frantically to complete their final project. They had developed a new type of communication system that could connect all of humanity's scattered colonies instantly. If Earth fell, the survivors would at least be able to coordinate their response. "We're running out of time," Rodriguez said as explosions shook the facility above them. "The surface installations are taking heavy damage." Dr. Carter's fingers flew over her computer controls. "Almost there. Just a few more minutes." The Zeltharian ground forces finally landed as the orbital bombardment continued. Their soldiers were as imposing as their ships, 8 feet tall, covered in natural armor plating and equipped with weapons that could cut through steel. They moved through Earth's burning cities, hunting down any remaining resistance. Colonel Murphy's militia units fought bravely but were overwhelmed. The weapons Dr. Carter's team had developed helped, but there simply weren't enough of them. One by one, Earth's defense centers fell silent in the underground facility. Dr. Carter finally activated the new communication network just as Zeltharian troops broke through the outer defenses. Her last transmission reached every human colony. "In space, the network is active. Stay connected. Stay alive. Make them pay." The facility was overrun moments later. Dr. Carter and Engineer Rodriguez died at their posts, but their work was complete. Scattered across dozens of star systems, human colonies received the final transmissions from Earth. They watched in horror as their homeworld burned. But they also received something else: the technical specifications for every weapon Dr. Carter's team had developed. Captain Clark managed to escape Earth in one of the last evacuation ships, carrying with her the complete records of everything humanity had learned about Zeltharian technology and tactics. As her ship jumped to faster-than-light travel, She looked back at the burning planet that had been her home. The Zaltharians declared victory within a week. Supreme Overlord Vexstar established Earth as a monument to Zaltharian power, leaving behind occupation forces and broadcast stations to spread the news of humanity's defeat across the galaxy. The message was clear: this is what happens to the species that defy the Empire. But the Zaltharians made a critical mistake. They assumed that destroying Earth would break humanity's spirit and scatter the survivors into helpless refugees. They had no understanding of human nature or the fury that burns in the hearts of those who have lost everything. In the outer colonies, the survivors received the final transmission from Earth. It was not a message of surrender or despair. It was a promise recorded by General Stone in his final moments. They have taken our world, but they have not taken our spirit. We are still here, we are still human, and we will make them regret the day they ever heard our name. The Zaltharians thought they had won a quick victory. Instead, they had just created their worst nightmare, an entire species with nothing left to lose and a burning desire for revenge. The real war was about to begin. 5 years had passed since Earth burned, and the galaxy had learned to fear a new name: human. What started as scattered refugees hiding in the Outer Rim had become something the Zaltharian Empire had never faced before. The humans were not just surviving, they were fighting back in ways that made no sense to traditional military thinking. Captain Diana Ross crouched in the cargo hold of what appeared to be a broken-down freight hauler drifting near the Zaltharian supply depot. Her ship looked like space junk from the outside, but hidden beneath the rusted hull were weapons that could punch holes through enemy armor. She watched through her scope as a Zaltharian convoy approached the depot, carrying food and ammunition to their forces occupying the Krell system. "Target confirmed," she whispered into her communicator. 3 heavy transports, minimal escort, beginning attack run. The freight hauler suddenly came alive, its hidden engines flaring as it accelerated toward the convoy. The Zaltharian escort ships barely had time to react before Diana's weapons opened fire. Unlike traditional space battles, this was an ambush pure and simple. The humans had learned that honor and fair fights were luxuries they could not afford. The first transport exploded in a ball of flame. The second managed to return fire, but Diana's ship was already moving, using the debris from the first explosion as cover. Within minutes, all 3 transports were destroyed, their supplies scattered across space. Diana's ship vanished into the asteroid field before Zaltharian reinforcements could arrive. This scene was repeated across the galaxy daily. Commander Ryan Bell coordinated dozens of similar attacks from his hidden base in the outer territories. The humans had built a communication network that allowed them to share intelligence instantly across hundreds of light years. When a Zaltharian patrol was spotted in one system, human raiders in completely different sectors would know about it. Within hours, the key to human success was their willingness to abandon everything the Zaltharians considered proper warfare. Engineer Maria Santos had spent 3 years studying captured Zaltharian technology, not to copy it, but to find its weaknesses. Every piece of enemy equipment had flaws that could be exploited, and Maria's workshops produced weapons specifically designed to take advantage of those flaws. "Their armor plating is incredibly strong," Maria explained to a group of new recruits at the hidden base on Titan Station. "But it has one weakness. The crystal matrix that makes it so tough also makes it brittle when hit with the right frequency of energy pulse. Our new rifles are tuned specifically to shatter Zaltharian armor." Sergeant Tim Johnson trained those recruits in combat techniques that would have horrified military officers from the old Earth armies. There were no rules, no codes of honor, no mercy. The Zaltharians had shown none when they burned Earth, so humans would show none in return. "Forget everything you think you know about fair fighting," Tim told his students. "The enemy is bigger, stronger, and better armed than you. Your only advantages are speed, surprise, and the fact that you are willing to do things they would never expect. Use those advantages." The human resistance operated in small, independent cells that could strike without warning and disappear before the enemy could respond. Captain Nicole Brown led one such cell, specializing in attacks on Zeltharian communication networks. Her team would infiltrate enemy facilities, plant explosives, and escape before anyone knew they had been there. Lieutenant Jake Davis commanded another cell that focused on rescuing prisoners and slaves from Zeltharian labor camps. These missions were among the most dangerous, as the camps were heavily guarded, but they served a double purpose. Not only did they free captives, but they also spread word among other enslaved species that the humans were still fighting. The psychological impact of human attacks was becoming as important as the physical damage. Species across the galaxy watched in amazement as these refugees from a burned world consistently outfought the supposedly invincible Zeltharian military. Word spread through underground networks that humanity might actually win this impossible war. Admiral Lisa Hayes had survived the destruction of Earth and now commanded the largest human fleet from a mobile base hidden in the gas clouds of the Nebula sector. Her forces included every type of ship imaginable, converted cargo haulers, rebuilt civilian vessels, and a few purpose-built warships constructed in secret shipyards scattered across human-controlled space. We are not trying to match them ship for ship, Admiral Hayes explained to her captains during a strategy meeting. We cannot win a conventional war against the Zeltharian Empire, but we can make their empire too expensive to maintain. Every supply convoy they lose, every garrison they have to reinforce, every patrol that never returns home costs them resources and morale. Captain Danny White commanded one of the Admiral's most effective raider squadrons. His ships specialized in hit-and-run attacks on Zeltharian mining operations and industrial facilities. The goal was not just to cause damage, but to force the enemy to divert resources from conquest to defense. They built their empire by being stronger than everyone else, Danny explained to his pilots. But strength means nothing if you cannot protect what you have conquered. We are going to make them defend everything, everywhere, all the time. Major Kate Wilson led the human special operations forces that had become legends among both allies and enemies. Her teams could infiltrate the most secure Zeltharian facilities, gather intelligence, and strike at high-value targets. They moved like ghosts through enemy territory, appearing and disappearing without warning. The turning point came when Kate's team managed to infiltrate a major Zeltharian command center and steal their complete battle plans for the next 6 months. The intelligence revealed that the Empire was struggling more than they wanted to admit. Human attacks were forcing them to spread their forces thin across their territory. Supreme Overlord Vexstar was furious when he learned about the security breach. He had expected the human problem to solve itself within a year or two. Instead, these primitive refugees were making his empire look weak in front of the entire galaxy. Other species were beginning to question Zeltharian invincibility. How can a species of scavengers and refugees continue to evade our superior forces? He demanded during a meeting with his military commanders. They have no homeworld, no industrial base, no formal military structure. Yet they continue to cause more damage than entire rebel fleets from established civilizations. The answer was simple, though the Zeltharians could not understand it. Humans had something that no other species in the galaxy possessed: the experience of losing everything and the determination to make their enemies pay for it. Every human fighter was motivated not by orders or duty, but by personal loss and burning anger. The resistance grew stronger every year. New recruits joined from among the refugees, but also from other species who had been inspired by human courage. The Draconi sent secret supplies and weapons. The Epsilon Collective provided safe harbors for human ships. Even some individual Zeltharians began to question whether their empire's policies were just Dr. Amanda. Cole established hidden medical stations where human wounded could recover and captured enemy technology could be studied. These facilities also served as recruitment centers, where refugees from destroyed worlds could be trained and equipped to fight. Alongside humans, the most successful human operation during this period was Admiral Hayes' assault on the Zeltharian fortress world of Crex Prime. The planet served as a major supply hub for enemy forces in 3 different sectors. Its destruction would cripple Zeltharian operations across a huge area of space. The attack was planned for months and involved coordination between dozens of human cells. While Captain Ross and her raiders created diversions in nearby systems, Admiral Hayes led the main assault force through a route that intelligence suggested was lightly defended. The battle for Krex Prime lasted 3 days. Human ships darted in and out of the planet's defenses like angry insects, striking at specific targets before the defenders could respond. They destroyed fuel depots, ammunition storage facilities, and communication centers with surgical precision. The final blow came when Major Wilson's special forces managed to infiltrate the planet's main power generation facility. The explosion that followed could be seen from orbit and left half the planet without electricity for weeks. As human forces withdrew from Krex Prime, they left behind something that chilled every Zeltharian who saw it. A message spray-painted on the walls of the destroyed command center. It read simply, "Remember Earth, we do." The successful attack on Krex Prime marked a new phase in the war. The humans were no longer just surviving or harassing enemy supply lines. They were capable of major military operations that could seriously damage Zeltharian infrastructure. More importantly, they had proven that no Zeltharian position was truly safe. Supreme Overlord Vexstar realized that he was facing an enemy unlike any in Zeltharian history. These humans fought without honor, struck without warning, and showed no mercy to those who had shown them none. They had turned the entire galaxy into a battlefield where traditional military superiority meant nothing. Other alien species watched the conflict with growing interest. If these homeless refugees could bloody the nose of the mighty Zeltharian Empire. 7 years after Earth's destruction, the galaxy had become a very different place. What started as a simple conquest by the Zeltharian Empire had turned into the largest and most brutal war in galactic history. The name human was now spoken, with respect in some sectors and terror in others, but never with the dismissive contempt it once carried. Captain Sean Parker stood on the bridge of his converted battleship, watching as alien vessels approached his position near the neutral moon of Valdris. These were not enemy ships but potential allies, representatives from the Korthani Republic and the Morellian Federation. Both species had suffered under Zeltharian rule for decades and were finally ready to openly support human resistance efforts. The meeting took place in a small conference room aboard Parker's ship. The Korthani delegate, a tall insectoid being named Click Whistle 9, spoke through a translation device, while the Morellian ambassador, Dr. Zara Moonwhisper, communicated through telepathic crystals that converted thoughts to speech. Our intelligence networks confirm what your people have achieved, Click Whistle 9 said, his mandibles clicking with what humans had learned was approval. The Zeltharian 7th Fleet lost 30% of its ships last month alone. Their supply lines are stretched beyond breaking point in 5 different sectors. Dr. Amanda Cole, now serving as humanity's chief diplomatic liaison, nodded grimly. The cost has been high for us too. We have lost many good people. But we learned something important. The Zeltharians are not invincible. They can be beaten if you know how to fight them. The Morellian ambassador projected her thoughts carefully. Our people wish to learn these tactics. The crystal mines of Morellis have fed Zeltharian war machines for too long. We are ready to fight for our freedom. This scene was being repeated across the galaxy. Species that had lived under Zeltharian control for generations were reaching out to human resistance cells, seeking training, weapons, and coordination. The humans had done something unprecedented. They had shown that the galaxy's greatest empire could be successfully challenged. Admiral Lisa Hayes was now coordinating resistance efforts across 12 different star systems from her flagship, a massive vessel built from the salvaged remains of 3 different ships. Her reputation had spread throughout known space. Even Zeltharian soldiers spoke her name with a mixture of fear and respect. Operation Retribution is ready to launch, Admiral Hayes announced during a strategic planning session with her senior officers. We have confirmation that Supreme Overlord Vexstar will be attending the victory celebration on Zeltharus Prime next week. This is our chance to strike at the heart of their empire. Commander Oliver Stone, who had risen through the ranks after showing exceptional skill in ship-to-ship combat, studied the tactical displays. The homeworld defenses are stronger than anything we have faced before. We will need every ship we can gather in perfect coordination to have any chance of success. Colonel Betty Adams commanded the ground assault forces that would attempt to reach the planet's surface during the chaos of the space battle. Her troops were veterans of dozens of raids and infiltration missions, but this would be their greatest challenge yet. We are not trying to conquer their homeworld, Admiral Hayes explained. We just need to prove that we can reach it. Every Zeltharian in the galaxy needs to see that nowhere is safe from human vengeance. The preparation for Operation Retribution took months. Human cells across the galaxy contributed ships, supplies, and intelligence. Captain Michelle Taylor managed the complex logistics of moving hundreds of vessels to the staging area without being detected. The coordination required was enormous, but humans had perfected the art of moving through space like ghosts. Meanwhile, Ambassador Carl Thompson was busy negotiating secret agreements with other galactic powers. The Draconian Republic had grown tired of Zeltharian expansion near their borders and were willing to provide heavy weapons in exchange for human raids on Zeltharian military installations. The Epsilon Collective offered safe harbor for human ships and secure communication channels. The most surprising alliance came from within the Zeltharian Empire itself. A group of younger Zeltharian officers, horrified by their leadership's brutal policies, made secret contact with human forces. These rebels provided crucial intelligence about defense systems and patrol schedules. Many of our people never wanted this war, explained Sub-Commander Krextal during a clandestine meeting with human representatives. The destruction of your world was ordered by the High Command without consulting the Military Council. Some of us believe that Supreme Overlord Vexstar has led our empire down a path of dishonor. Dr. Greg Martinez, who had taken over Dr. Carter's research programs, used this intelligence to develop new weapons specifically designed to penetrate Zeltharian homeworld defenses. His team had perfected energy weapons that could overload the crystalline matrices that powered enemy shields and armor. Their technology is based on harmonic resonance, Dr. Martinez explained to the Strike Force commanders. If we can disrupt those harmonics at precisely the right frequency, their defenses will collapse like a house of cards. The attack on Zeltharus Prime began during the height of the victory celebration. Zeltharian leaders were gathered in their capital city, congratulating themselves on what they believed was their continuing dominance of the galaxy. They had no idea that a massive human fleet was approaching through the outer system. The first indication of trouble came when the orbital defense platform suddenly went silent. Human infiltration teams, led by specialists trained by Major Kate Wilson, had spent weeks positioning themselves throughout the defense network. When Admiral Hayes gave the signal, they struck simultaneously at dozens of critical points. Captain Danny White led the first wave of attacking ships through the gaps in the defense perimeter. His raiders, now flying purpose-built warships instead of converted cargo haulers, punched through the Zeltharian lines with devastating efficiency. The enemy had expected a conventional fleet engagement, but humans had learned never to fight the way their enemies expected. The space battle raged for hours as more human ships poured through the breaches in the defense grid. Commander Stone's heavy assault squadrons engaged the Zeltharian home fleet while smaller, faster ships darted toward the planet's surface. The goal was not to destroy everything in sight, but to reach specific targets that would send an unmistakable message. Colonel Adams and her ground forces managed to land near the capital city during the height of the space battle. Their mission was to reach the victory celebration and capture or kill Supreme Overlord Vexstar himself. The symbolism of such an action would be worth more than destroying a dozen fleets. Fighting through the streets of the Zeltharian capital was unlike anything the humans had experienced before. The enemy soldiers were defending their homeworld and fought with desperate courage. Buildings thousands of years old became battlegrounds as human troops advanced toward the government district. The climax came when Colonel Adams' forces reached the great ceremonial hall where the victory celebration was taking place. The massive chamber was filled with Zeltharian military and political leaders, all of whom had been congratulating themselves on their empire's strength just hours before. Supreme Overlord Vexstar stood at the center of the hall, his ornate ceremonial armor gleaming under the crystal lights. When the doors exploded inward and human soldiers poured through, his expression changed from confusion to rage to something humans had never seen in Zeltharian eyes before. Fear. Impossible, he snarled, drawing his ceremonial weapon. No primitive species could reach the heart of our empire. This is our sacred homeworld. Colonel Adams stepped forward, her battle armor scarred from the fighting in the streets. Nothing is sacred to dead children, she replied, referring to the countless young humans who had died when Earth burned. You wanted to make an example of humanity. Today we return the favor. The battle in the ceremonial hall was brief but vicious. Zeltharian guards fought desperately to protect their leader, but they were facing soldiers who had been forged in the fires of loss and revenge. When the shooting stopped, Supreme Overlord Vexstar lay dying on the floor of his own throne room. With his last breath, he gasped out a question that would haunt the galaxy. What are you? Colonel Adams looked down at him without pity. We are what you made us. The human forces withdrew from Zeltharis Prime before enemy reinforcements could trap them, but the damage was done. The Supreme Overlord of the Zeltharian Empire was dead, killed in the heart of his own capital by the same species he had tried to exterminate. The news spread across the galaxy within hours, but the most important consequence of Operation Retribution was not the death of Vexstar or the military victory. It was the psychological impact on every species in the galaxy. If humans could reach the Zeltharian homeworld and kill their leader, then nowhere was truly safe from human vengeance. Other resistance movements across the galaxy were inspired by the human example. Rebellions broke out on dozens of worlds as enslaved species realized that their oppressors were not invincible. The Zeltharian Empire, which had seemed unshakable for 3 millennia, began to crack under the pressure of fighting wars on hundreds of fronts simultaneously. The final campaign against the Zeltharian Empire began 2 years after the death of Supreme Overlord Vexstar. The galaxy had changed completely during those months. What was once a mighty empire spanning 12 star systems had become a collection of isolated strongholds desperately trying to survive. Against coordinated attacks from dozens of different species, Admiral Lisa Hayes stood in the command center of her flagship, now called the Earthborn, watching tactical displays that showed human fleets moving into position across the galaxy. After 9 years of war, humanity had grown from scattered refugees into the most feared military force in known space. But this final push would not be about conquest or territory. It would be about making sure that no trace of Zeltharian civilization survived to threaten anyone ever again. All fleet commanders report ready, announced Captain Rebecca Jones, who now served as Admiral Hayes' chief of staff. Rebecca had lost her entire family when Earth burned, and her hatred for the Zeltharians burned as cold and bright as a star. Operation Final Solution can begin on your order. The name was chosen deliberately. The Zeltharians had intended to solve the human problem permanently by destroying Earth. Now humanity would solve the Zeltharian problem the same way. There would be no prisoners, no negotiations, no mercy. The galaxy would see what happened. To species that tried to exterminate humanity, Commander Luke Brown led the assault on the Zeltharian stronghold system of Mordek. His fleet included ships from 6 different species, all fighting under human command and using tactics developed through years of bitter experience. The Zeltharian defenders fought bravely, but they were facing an enemy that had learned to fight without honor or restraint. "Remember Earth," Commander Brown announced over the fleet communication system as his ships moved in for the attack. It had become humanity's war cry, spoken before every battle. The words reminded every human fighter why they were there. What they were fighting for, the battle for Mordek, lasted 3 days. Human ships used tactics that would have been considered war crimes by the old galactic conventions. They targeted civilian areas, destroyed hospitals, and showed no mercy to surrendering enemies. The Zeltharians had written the rules when they burned Earth. Now humanity was following those same rules. Captain Troy Adams commanded the ground assault forces that swept through Mordax cities. His soldiers moved through the streets like death itself, killing every Zeltharian they found. Men, women, children, soldiers, civilians, it made no difference. The Zeltharians had not distinguished between combatants and innocents when they destroyed Earth's cities. "Sir, we have several thousand Zeltharians requesting surrender," reported Major Sandra Williams as her troops secured the capital city. "What are your orders?" Captain Adams' response was cold and final. "No prisoners, no survivors. Complete the mission." This scene was repeated across the galaxy as human forces systematically destroyed every Zeltharian population center. Species that had allied with humanity watched in horror and awe as their new partners carried out genocide with mechanical precision. This was not the passionate violence of revenge. This was the cold calculation of extinction. The Zeltharian leadership, now scattered across their remaining strongholds, attempted to negotiate through intermediary species. The Draconi Republic offered to mediate peace talks. The Epsilon Collective proposed prisoner exchanges. Even species that had remained neutral throughout the war begged humanity to show mercy. Admiral Hayes' response became legendary throughout the galaxy. Speaking before the assembled Galactic Council, she delivered words that would be remembered for centuries. They chose this path when they burned our world. They chose this when they murdered our children. They wanted to make an example of humanity. Very well, we accept. The systematic destruction of Zeltharian civilization continued for 18 months. Human forces developed new weapons specifically designed to kill Zeltharians more efficiently. Dr. Greg Martinez's research teams created biological agents that targeted Zeltharian physiology. Engineer Paul Rodriguez, working from designs left by the late Dr. Carter, built machines that could strip the crystal matrices from Zeltharian armor and use them as weapons. The most devastating attacks were not military but cultural. Human forces destroyed Zeltharian libraries, museums, and religious sites. They erased historical records, artistic works, and scientific achievements accumulated over 3,000 years of civilization. When humanity was finished, nothing would remain of Zeltharian culture except warning stories told by other species. The final battle of the war took place at Zeltharis Prime itself. The Zeltharian homeworld had been fortified beyond anything ever seen in galactic history. Every able-bodied Zeltharian had been armed and prepared to fight to the death. They knew that surrender meant extinction, so they chose to die fighting. Admiral Hayes personally led the assault fleet that broke through the homeworld's defenses. The space battle lasted for days, with human ships accepting massive casualties to maintain their attack. The goal was not military victory but complete annihilation. Every Zeltharian ship, station, and satellite had to be destroyed. Captain Troy Adams commanded the final ground assault on the Zeltharian capital. His forces have been fighting for months, moving from planet to planet, city to city, building to building. They had become something that frightened even their own allies, soldiers who killed without emotion or hesitation. The last stand of the Zeltharian Empire took place in the ancient palace where their civilization had been governed for millennia. New Supreme Overlord Kexvar, who had taken power after Vextar's death, made his final broadcast to the galaxy from his throne room as human soldiers fought their way through the palace corridors. "We call upon all civilized species to witness this atrocity," Kexvar said, his voice breaking with desperation. "The humans have become monsters worse than anything the galaxy has ever known. They seek not victory but the complete extinction of our people. We beg for intervention before they turn their methods against other species." The broadcast was interrupted when Captain Adams and his assault team broke through the throne room doors. Kexvar drew his ceremonial sword and prepared to die fighting, but Adams did not give him the chance for a heroic last stand. The Supreme Overlord was shot down like any other enemy soldier. As Kexvar lay dying, he gasped out the same question his predecessor had asked, "What have you become?" Admiral Hayes, who had arrived to witness the end personally, Look down at the last ruler of the Zeltharian Empire without pity. We became what you forced us to become. You wanted to know what humanity was capable of when pushed beyond all limits. Today you learned. The systematic extermination was completed within 2 weeks of the homeworld's fall. Human forces moved through every Zeltharian settlement, space station, and hidden colony with methodical thoroughness. When they were finished, the Zeltharian species existed only in historical records and the nightmares of survivors from other species who had witnessed the campaign, but humanity was not content with simple extinction. They spent additional months destroying every trace of Zeltharian civilization. Monuments were blown up, cities were razed to their foundations, and even the graves of ancient Zeltharian leaders were destroyed. The message was clear. This was what happened to species that tried to exterminate humanity. Dr. James Phillips, now serving as humanity's chief xenobiologist, explained the logic behind the complete destruction to a gathering of galactic leaders. Some lessons must be absolute. The galaxy needed to understand what happens when you declare war on humanity. Half measures would only encourage others to test our resolve. The aftermath of the Zeltharian extinction transformed galactic politics forever. The name Zeltharian became a curse word used by dozens of species, synonymous with the catastrophic consequences of unprovoked aggression. Parents would tell their children, "Don't be a Zeltharian," when they misbehaved. Humanity established the new Terran Federation. With its capital on the rebuilt Earth, the planet had been terraformed back to habitability using captured Zeltharian technology, but the new cities were built around monuments to the dead. Every human child learned the history of the war, and the price of showing mercy to those who showed none. Admiral Hayes became the first fleet commander of the Federation Navy. Her doctrine became the foundation of human military policy. We seek peace with all species. But understand this, we are the children of Earth, forged in fire and loss. Harm us, and we will not stop until your civilization exists only in warning stories told to children across the galaxy. Other species approached humanity with a mixture of respect and terror. The humans had proven themselves capable of both remarkable cooperation and absolute ruthlessness. Trade agreements were signed quickly and honored completely. No one wanted to risk becoming the next cautionary tale. The Draconi Republic established a formal alliance with humanity, recognizing them as equals in military strength. The Epsilon Collective opened their borders to human colonists and traders. Even species that had never had contact with either humans or Zeltharians sent diplomatic missions to assure the new Terran Federation of their peaceful intentions. Years passed, and the galaxy settled into a new pattern. Humanity built colonies on dozens of worlds,